Welcome back everyone. In this video, we will go through one of the most important topics in React, that is hooks. Let's get into it. What is a hook? In React, a hook is a special function provided by a React that allows functional component to hook into certain React features and capabilities, such as state management, lifecycle methods, context, and many more. Hooks were added to React in version 16.8. To transit from class to functional components, hooks let us use state and other features within functional component, that is, without writing a class component. Remember that you must import hooks from the React, and hooks are also to be called at the top of the component. Hooks contain reusable code logic that is separate from the component tree. They allow us to hook up functionality to our components. What you are seeing here is a list of hooks used in React. In today's video, we are going to cover the first three hooks: useState, useEffect, and useContext. Okay, but these are one of the most important hooks which are used in React. Let's talk about the useState hook and how it works. The useState hook allows us to add state to our functional components. Now there might arise a question in your mind: what is state? So, a state is a way to store and manage data that can change over time and affect a component's rendering. The useState hook is a function that we can invoke to return an array. The first value of the array is the state variable that we want to use, and the second value is the function that we use to update the first value. Okay, let's understand useState hook with an example. So here I have opened a React project in the Visual Studio Code that I used for my last video, and now let's start learning how the useState hook works. To use the useState hook in React, we have to first import it from the React. So this line is importing our useState hook from React. We then define and export a default React functional component, and it is named counter in our case. Okay, we declare a state variable count with an initial value of 0 using the useState hook, and then we declare the setCount, which is the function that will be used to update the state. Now here what I'm doing is I'm defining two event handlers, increment and decrement. These functions will be called when we click on the respective buttons to increase or decrease the count of the counter. Inside the increment function, we use setCount to increase the count state, and similarly in the decrement function, we use setCount to decrease the count state. And these both functions takes the new value of count as an argument. Then in the return statement, we display the current count value inside the paragraph tag. We then use two buttons, increment and decrement. Both these buttons have an onClick attribute that specifies a JavaScript function to be executed when the button will be clicked. The increment and decrement functions are using the setCount function to update the count state variable. They are either incrementing or decrementing the value. Okay. Because of this, count state is modified, causing the component to re-render with the updated value. So now once we are done with writing all the code, let's save this file, and after it has compiled successfully, here you will have this count, increment and decrement. And now to check if these are working properly, let's click on increment, and yes, you can see here that it is incrementing like this. And when you click on decrement, here we have it. So the values are decreasing, right? Again, increment and then decrement. And then when you refresh this, the count will become 0, okay? And then you can do it again, increment or decrement. One thing I noticed here is that we used the class name for div, but we did not import the CSS. So how we can do that is by saying import app.css, okay? Like this. And save the file, and there you have this counter now in middle, because in the CSS we have this class text align center. Okay, so let's refresh this, and there we have this increment and decrement again. Okay, so this is how we use the useState hook in React. Now, let's talk about the useEffect hook. The useEffect hook allows us to perform side effects in our components, like fetching data and directly updating the DOM and timers. In React, functional components are primarily used for rendering UI elements, right? However, sometimes we need to perform additional tasks that are not directly related to rendering, such as fetching data from an API or interacting with the DOM. To manage these side effects in the functional components, we use the useEffect hook. The useEffect hook will allow us to express the code that needs to be run after the component renders. Now, basically, when does useEffect run? So, useEffect accepts two arguments, a function, which is the effect, and an optional array of dependencies. The function, or you can say effect, is executed after the component renders and after any subsequent re-renders. By default, the effect runs after every render, but we can control it by specifying dependencies. If we provide an empty dependency array like square bracket, empty square bracket, the effect runs only after the initial render. If you specify dependencies like the dependency 1, dependency 2 inside the dependency array, the effect runs whenever any of those dependencies changes between renders. Okay, so let's understand useEffect with an example. So into our code, we start by importing React, useState and useEffect hook from React, and then we also import CSS. Then we define a functional component that is named counter. Okay, again, we are naming it as counter, but you can name it anything you want. Inside the counter component, we use the useState hook to declare a state variable called count, okay, and then we are using setCount as a function and the initial value is set to 0. Then we use useEffect hook to perform the side effect in our functional component. So what we are doing here is we are updating the document title based on the count state. So now as you will see here, it is React app. But when we click on the counter button here, that it will show you clicked 1 times, 2 times, okay? Don't worry, we will just see it, how does it works, okay? So as you will see here, we are passing a function as a first argument to the useEffect, okay? This function will run after the initial render and whenever this dependency, which is count in our case, changes, okay? So in our document title, we are also including the current count value, which will effectively update the title to show how many times the button has been clicked. Then in the return statement, we have a div with the class name app and a button element, okay? When the button is clicked, the onClick event handler is triggered and it calls the setCount to increment the count state by 1, okay? So now let's save this file, and after the changes have been done, you will see here click 0 times and the document title has also changed. You clicked 0 times and now let's click on it like 1 and you will see that it changed. 2, it's changing in here also, and the document title is also updating after every click. Let's see 3, 4, 5 and you will see that these both are working perfectly, okay? So when do we use the useEffect hook? We use it when we want to perform a side effect on any of our components, okay? Now let's talk about the useContext hook in React. The useContext hook in React is a feature that allows us to pass data down the component tree without us having to manually pass the properties through each level of nesting. Okay, it's particularly useful when you have data that needs to be shared among many components. The useContext hook is used to manage global data like global state, when you want to use theme into your website or services or user settings, and there are many more things where you can use useContext hook. So when you are using the context in React, basically you have to follow the 3 simple steps. The first one is like you have to create the context, then second is you have to provide the context, and the third one, if we are providing, then we also want to consume the context, right? So basically here again we start by importing the React and two hooks like useContext and useState from the React. One thing I also want to tell you here is that we basically use useContext with useState most of the time, okay? And also we import the CSS file, okay? So this CSS file now is containing two classes, that is app.light and for dark mode. Like this would be used for light mode and this would be used for dark theme. So here we start by following the step 1, that is to create a context. So we are creating a React context called theme context using react.createContext. This context will allow us to share and access the theme among components. We then define a functional component and it is named app. Now in this case, okay, inside it we are using the useState hook to create a state variable called theme and initializing it with the value of light. Then we are declaring a variable called toggle theme, which is a function that will toggle the theme between light and dark based on the current state. And the second step is to provide the context. We are returning a statement and providing a context value using themeContext.provider component. This context value includes the theme state and the toggle theme function which we defined above. Here we are wrapping the content in a div with the class name that combines with app with the current theme using this template literal. And then down here we are calling my component which we created inside the themeContext.provider. Inside this component we use the useContext hook to access the theme context and the destructure the theme and toggle theme values from the context, which is our third step, consuming the context. And then in the return statement we are using an h1 tag inside a div element which will render the current theme. And then we also have this button over here. So when we click on this button, it will call the toggle theme function to switch between the light and the dark themes. Let's save this file. And after it's done, you will have this current theme light. And when you click on toggle theme, you will have this div or this component to become dark, right? And again, when you click on toggle theme, the theme will be light. Click on again, the theme is dark. So this is basically how you use useContext hook in React. So you can just head over to this website and learn more about any of the hooks which you want in detail. And as you will scroll down here, just I want to show you one thing here. So these are the examples of how we use the useState hook. So this is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something new. And if you have any queries, please do not hesitate to comment them, or you can even join the Discord server which is provided on my about section of this channel. Okay, so that is it, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye and take care.